A couple of things that we are going to do tonight. As I mentioned, I think most of you heard, we're going to keep everybody on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. There are there were 50 people signed up. So if that number changed, so we kind of based how we're going to do tonight's facilitation based on that number. If we end up with a smaller number, we may be able to have you go on unmute and we will be able to hear each other. But for now, I'm going to go ahead with what we're going to do in terms of the presentation, the way that it is right now. So hopefully, I don't know how many of you have been on Zoom calls before, but my guess is that, you know, it's been over a year and a lot of us are even doing it with our families now. We are going to use the chat feature quite exclusively tonight. So if you don't know where that chat button is, it usually, if you're on a laptop, it's down at the bottom of your screen. When you bring your mouse down to the bottom, there's a big red button that says leave. Hopefully you don't press that until it's time to leave. And then there, right about in the middle of the screen, it says chat. And so if you have questions or if you are having difficulty when we start doing our public input with the tool that we're going to use tonight, you can use the chat. Again, depending on how the numbers stay tonight, we may be able to actually be able to open this up and have you voice the answers with our public input, but I want to make sure that everybody can be heard. And I think that what we've created tonight will work the best. So at this point, if you did have a question or can't find the chat button, can you please like literally raise your hand so that Maureen or I can see if you don't know where that chat button is? So I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm assuming that everybody can find that chat. So at this point, I am going to share my screen. We have a very short PowerPoint that we're going to share with you to give you some information about the strategic planning process. So just give me a second. So you should be able to see my screen now. Again, I'm very happy. My name is Deb Hoadley. I am the facilitator for this planning process. And I'm very happy to be asked back by Maureen and the Westborough group so that I can help set another vision for the library in the next 3 years. So our agenda tonight, let me see if I can, there we go. We just had our welcome. Maureen is going to give an update both in terms of what is happening now with the library. Some of you may not know if they're open or not open and want to share that with folks that are interested in learning what's going on now, as well as where they're in terms of the strategic planning process at this point and some updates with that. Then I'm going to share some library trends. I have a slide that shows some of the current and future trends of libraries, just to kind of share with you where libraries are going and what they might already be doing now, especially with the opportunities that have arisen for them over the last year. I'm going to give a brief overview of the strategic planning process, what we've been doing up to this date, and then what we'll continue to do through the process of finally writing the plan. And then we're going to get into 2 community participation exercises. And I'm hoping that technology will work tonight and we will have a really cool tool to use. And if not, we have a lot of backups that we can use in case that does not work. So Maureen, at this point, when I am sharing my screen, I'm not going to be able to see anything in the chat. So if things do come up, please let me know. So I will keep this screen up. And if you want to share your library update, that would be wonderful. Oh, and I'm sorry, Maureen. I even wrote notes to start with, and then I totally forgot that I wrote them. So the first thing is the muting, but the second thing is that this public forum is going to be recorded tonight. And the reason that it's going to be recorded is the cable channel would like to air this. So other folks who may not have been able to join us tonight can also learn about the process and hear and see some of the things that you folks give as community in terms of the community participation. And I just wanted to make note of that because it is being recorded. So I just want everybody to realize that. Okay, Maureen, we are all set.
Hey, thank you. So again, welcome everyone. I'm Maureen Amiot, the library director at Westborough Public Library. To give you kind of a quick update on where things are at now, the library is currently open, and you can come in. There are a lot of the libraries in neighboring towns or in other places are only doing curbside pickup, or they're allowing you to come in by appointment only. We are open. So we have capacity limits right now, and we ask everyone to limit their time to about 20 minutes so that our friends and neighbors have a chance to come in and browse the shelves. When you come into the library, or if you've been in lately, it looks very different than it did a year ago, pre-COVID. Right now, there's no furniture. You can't come in and sit and read or sit and study, which is something that is really hard for us because we are all about being a place where people can come and spend their time and read and study. But right now, we're not able to offer that. However, we do have some plans in place, and we're slowly, if the COVID numbers stay low and things continue to look good, we're slowly going to be raising our capacity limits and raising our time limits so that hopefully by the end of May, we'll be back to almost normal, what we call normal services. Our services may be slightly different than they were pre-COVID, but we're working really hard to get furniture back in and allow people to be able to come in and spend a little bit more time. But right now we're open, so you can come in and browse the shelves. That's something that people really miss. You can talk to the librarians to get some recommendations on books to read. Kids love coming in and seeing their favorite librarians in the children's room and being able to pick out their own books. We know it's not the same browsing on the computer and placing holds on your books as it is when you come in and browse the shelves. So the hours are posted on the website. Right now we're pretty much open 10 to 3 on weekdays. We're closed on Fridays because of staffing, and we are open on Saturdays from 10 to 3 right now. So if you haven't been in, please come in and see our staff and see what we've been doing, because it is really exciting. Down the road, some of you may know that we've been working for many years on a plan to renovate and expand the library. And I just a real quick, brief update on that project. When we did our planning and design process back in 2016, 2017, what we envisioned for the future is a renovated, expanded library on the same site. We would be removing the 1980 addition, excavating down a few feet and doing a full 3-story addition in the back of the library where the current 1980 addition is located. It would give us more space for the children's room, more space for teens, more public meeting space, which was something that we heard at the time when we've been hearing for years that is something that the community really wants and really needs. And would allow us to be able to do a lot more programming for all ages, different types of events and art shows and all kinds of really exciting stuff. We applied for a grant from our state agency, the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, in 2017, and we were awarded a grant for $9.5 million. That is partial, that covers a good chunk of the project. At the time, the project was estimated to cost about 23 million, and our grant came in at about or at just under 9.5 million. So, but we were waitlisted for the funds. So we've slowly worked our way up the wait list because projects above us on the waiting list have started. And they award usually 2 or 3 grants each year. So we're currently sitting at number 4 on the waiting list. And we expect to come up to the top of the waiting list in July of 2022. When that happens, we'll have 6 months to get our local approval, which means we'll be at the fall 2022 town meeting, asking for the town to approve the project. And we are very optimistic that the project will be approved and that we'll be able to move forward with our renovation. So that would mean about a year of what they call design development, where they refine the designs, we get some more public input, and we start the bidding process that's required under state law, just all the behind the scenes kind of things. The library would be looking for a temporary location at that time. We won't be able to stay in the building while it's under construction. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to find a place close to downtown or in the downtown area that would be our temporary space. We would move into that probably fall of 23. And construction would take about 2 years. That's what we normally plan on for any kind of big construction like this. So that gets us to fall of 25. And then we say probably like first quarter of 2026 would be like the paint dry and furniture is back in place and we're open and we have our big like grand opening party and everybody celebrates. So that's kind of the timeline. That's where things are at. I know you've heard about this project for a long time. We actually started with a feasibility study and a needs assessment in 2012. So the timeline from 2012 to 2026, when it ultimately gets finished, it's a long process, but it will be worth it in the end, and we'll have a library that will meet our needs for the next probably 50 years or more. So it's really exciting. It's an exciting time to be part of the library and to be looking at our strategic plan and thinking about what's ahead for Westborough as a community and the library as well. We did have a strategic plan in place that was our 2015 to 2019 strategic plan. And then once we got to the end of that strategic plan, we were kind of on the waiting list at that point for construction. So we thought we would just do an annual action plan, our agency calls that, and just kind of carry our existing plan forward. But now we've been on the waiting list and our plan expired, a few years ago. And we decided with the help of the staff at the Board of Library Commissioners that we should just do our new plan now and kind of plan for what our community wants and needs in the transition time between now and when our building project could be starting, and then start imagining what types of things we will be looking for and wanting in our new building down the road. So that's why we're all here tonight. And any strategic plan that's a good plan really relies on the input of the community. And that's why I was so thrilled to see such a great turnout for this meeting tonight. And I'm sure we'll get good response down the road from our public survey, which Deb will mention in a little bit. But everything that you give us tonight really is important and will become part of the plan that we put in place going forward. So I thank you again for being here and being part of this. I passionately love our library, and I'm glad you all do too, because you wouldn't be here otherwise. So thank you for that. And I'll give it back to you, Deb.
So at this point, if you have any questions for Maureen, if you can put those in the chat so that we can see them. And then, Maureen, if there are any, if you wanna, we'll give people a second to put those in. I still can't see chat. Okay. And as people are maybe thinking of questions, one of the things that we did decide was that normally a strategic plan is for a 5 year period. We're going to embark on a 3 year plan because, as Maureen mentioned, the timeline. We feel that the 3 years will bring the library up to a point where then the new building should be a reality and the process will have begun, and then they can start to really think about how the building, as Maureen mentioned, there's going to be about a year of planning and design and really coming back to the community and thinking about strategically again, what is the best way for that new building to meet those needs. So at various points through the process, there's going to be opportunities for public input. So we thought that it would be a good idea to do a shorter plan for now and then see how things progress. And as Maureen mentioned, the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, knowing that they are number 4 on the wait list, if something gets bubbled up and they get pushed, there is an opportunity to just put in for an action plan each year as they need to, knowing that there are other things that they're gathering input on, such as the planning and design phase of a new building project. So I just want to mention that to folks because this, as Maureen said, this isn't going to be the last time in the next, we're not going to wait another 5 years before we ask your input. It's going to be happening a little bit earlier. Maureen, were there any questions?
Yes, there was one question that, is it possible that post-COVID and or new trends would change the size and scope of the library edition as currently designed? And so what I would say about that is the size will not change. The way the interior is laid out, it's very possible that that will change. And the designs that we have that came out of our planning and design process before we were awarded the grant, it was designed very high level and to be very flexible. Flexibility of design was a key because looking at the trends that Deb is going to show you, you'll see a lot of things that are coming down the road that will demand us to have space that can be reconfigured in a lot of different ways. So one of the strengths of the design that as presented was that it does have very flexible use of space. But I really do think that the way that we laid it out and some of the spaces that we designated for certain uses, I think will change just because the trends and the things that we were looking at in 2017 are very different than what we're looking at now. And but it's designed in a way that we will be able to do those things. So the size and scope are based on research that we did at the time into demographics and demographic projections of our community into the future. So the building is designed to meet the current and future population of Westborough. So the size won't change. I hope that helps. If not, chat back to me and I'll clarify. The other question that came up is, where does the other 14 million come from? Do we have to have restraint in our budget for the next 3 to 4 years to have enough for the new addition? So the other 14 million will come from, some will be fundraising. There is a new nonprofit 501c3 that was formed a couple of years ago, the Westborough Public Library Foundation. And they are committed to raising funds for the renovation and expansion, but also for the future needs of the library as far as capital projects like anything construction related or building systems, like those things that you always see at town meeting, to try and keep those off of the taxpayer, off the tax bills. So the foundation has committed to raising funds towards the 14 million. Some will come from the town as well. from borrowing. But it won't affect the library budget, because the library budget that we use for operations, for staffing and for heat and electricity and books and all the things we need to run a library, the operations funds are separate from all of the capital things like construction and building systems. So it won't affect our operating budget going into the future. It'll be worked into the town's capital planning process. And we're already in the process of working with the town and the finance team to make that happen.
And usually those, oh, I was
Sorry,
going to
Deb.
say those are usually bonded, those big building projects, so that there's a good interest rate, and they use, they go through the state to have a bond.
Yeah. And a follow-up question was, would the library ever consider a smaller, less expensive addition? The way I can say that is possibly, but it would not be eligible for the grant funding that we currently have. The grant that we received, the $9.5 million, is based on the design as presented to the Board of Library Commissioners. And as I said, that's based on the future needs of the town and the projections for demographics and future use. And they would not allow us to do a smaller project when they had approved us for a larger project. We would be moving forward with the plan that we currently have in place. So the only way that we could do a smaller, less expensive addition would be to pay for it on our own without the help of the Board of Library Commissioners with their $9.5 million. The other alternative would be for us to decline the grant and apply again in a future grant round with a smaller, less expensive addition. But the next time we would have the opportunity to do that would be sometime like around 2030 or 2031. And we don't feel that that would be in the very best interests of the town if we have the money now to wait that long to improve and expand our library. So anything else before we move on? Okay.
And
Thank
I
you.
think those,
If anything comes up, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll try to answer any questions as they come up later.
And I think these are great questions, because these are common questions that many community folks are asking, in terms of a smaller plan. And really there's a formula, as Maureen said, that the Mass Board of Library Commissioners are expected, their libraries to follow when they put together their design plan, so that it's not built and then, 25 years later, it's too small or too big. They really are trying to look out, and I'm not sure at this point, they have awarded, I'm not quite sure how many construction grants, but there are quite a few within Massachusetts that they have taken up, and all of them, no one has said that they've built something too big. It has met the needs of the community, and even sometimes they wish that it was bigger. So while it sounds like a ton of money, and it is, and it will impact through the bonding of some of the money and your fundraising, it will, community needs to support this, which is another reason why we're doing the strategic planning process, is to allow for questions like this to come up, and for the library actually to be at the heart of the community and really meeting those needs that the community has asked them to meet. So when we get to the community participation exercises, you may be surprised, but it's not going to have anything to do with the library. And the reason for that is because the community is what is at the heart of the library, and that is you. That is making sure that your needs and wants are met. So, all right. So we're going to move on now to our current and future trends. This is kind of a laundry list of some of the things that may be going on now, especially in terms of partnerships. We're seeing a lot of partnerships with social workers, with the health industry, especially with COVID. And trying to work with various organizations to get information out and do various things. So community partnerships about halfway down there is something that is just strengthening. Every time we have some things that are coming up like public health, it's really important that we partner with hospitals, with our schools, with businesses that can enhance what the library is doing, because as we know, you're in a profession, and then there are experts that are also in those professions that we need to be able to rely on to give the best information. So those partnerships are really important, and they're key to, again, having the community's needs met in a very specific way. So some of the other things that are on here, I know Westborough has kind of a media lab maker space right now in an area. I'm not sure that it can be used now during COVID, because it's only it really takes more time than 20 minutes to go in there and produce whatever you want to produce. But those are the kinds of creative spaces that we don't see going away, and they're more open spaces. To allow those creative projects to happen in a collaborative way with multi-generations. So if you can imagine some of the, or know of any maker spaces now, it's kind of a big room that can be modular, that can get moved around. I also know that Westborough does lend non-traditional items, and some of those tend to take up a little more room than our little books that are a certain size. And so that is also, lending those things that we're in a sharing economy right now, and a lot of folks do not want to buy that particular cake pan for $18 and then just use it once. What else do they do with it? So um, or go and buy a fishing pole or something that may be able to be shared in a safe way. So lots of libraries are moving in that direction. The other things are, I'm putting Zoom. That's what we're doing. Who knew? For all intents and purposes, I would have been down in Westborough in person, coming down from my home in New Hampshire, taking about 3 hours to get to you. And instead, I'm able to be here with you tonight. And I don't think that this technology is going away. I think that more and more meetings may be hybrid. So organizations that use your meeting space are going to need those technologies that are in place for people to be able to meet virtually and not just physically in a program room. I mentioned Apple Watch because a lot of this is trending right on our wrists or in the palm of our hand. So making sure that things are available for people in that way. One thing that has come up in a couple of the meetings is related to this workforce development and the entrepreneurial services and creating co-spaces that people can work in. Some libraries are actually creating rooms where people can go in and work quietly, but they're of different industries, and just organically start to build their small business with each other. So again, we don't see that going away. And I think that it's a perfect place for libraries to get involved. And I know that Maureen and the Westborough staff do take seriously their small business relationships and are helping small businesses grow. So that's another piece of that. We are looking at publishing, and as more and more authors are wanting to get published, this is an area that libraries are finding themselves in, getting a published print on demand machine and being able to have novel writing in their libraries and then put together a book for people. Again, kind of playing on that the creativity of our communities and helping them produce something that they want to share at a larger scale. Podcasts, that would fall under your media lab. Digitization of local and special collections. Lots of libraries have things that they want to share. And again, scanning equipment and or families wanting to come in and actually preserve some of their family history, and curating some of those special collections, not just library special collections. We're seeing a demand for that. I don't think I need to talk about digital collections because those are in high demand right now as people were locked in their homes. But the other thing that comes next, the 24/7 ways for people to get materials, this is physical materials. And sort of like the Amazon lockers, libraries went to curbside and putting things out for patrons on a table out in their front porch, or running things down to patrons in their cars. We're seeing a need for this to continue past COVID. We think that this is the way that people are going to want to get their materials, not to have to come into the library and you got 3 kids in the car, you're not going to want to take them all out to go grab 2 books. So we really are looking at how popular and how in demand those curbside services are and how we can continue them. So something would be like the Amazon lockers that people would get a code and they could go and pick up their books anytime, not just when the library's open and they can put them safely on a table outside or run them out to people. Some of the MOOCs, I'm not sure if a lot of people have heard of a MOOC. As people have been kind of cooped up at home, a lot of professional development has happened. A lot of online courses have come up and people are taking advantage of those. So the library is a perfect convener for people to come together over common interests or to come together on an online course where they really can't see each other or meet with each other, and they want to discuss their course as well as other courses related to a topic together. So again, space to do that, space to work on projects that might be related to these online courses, and having the ability to bring people together that way. I mentioned expertise. We're also finding staff, especially over this past year, have interests and hobbies and things that they are now sharing with their library communities through Zoom. I know that a lot of libraries are watching their librarians and staff in their own kitchens doing a cooking demonstration, or showing knitting because that's what they've taken up over COVID, and are actually sharing those. So this idea of an information concierge is really to tap into those expertise that the staff have in a way that has not been done before. More internal, but it also comes from the external drive of what you are looking for in the library. So at this point, these are, our list of things that we kind of see either now or on the horizon in a bigger and more impressive way. Does anybody have either something that they've seen in another library that would be related to a trend, or that you have questions about any one of these? So if you could type that in the chat, that would be great. I'll give you a second to, if anybody has any questions about any of that.
While we're giving them a second to type, I just wanted to mention our library of things that we loan at our library has things like a telescope, a sewing machine, and a power washer. So if anyone is planning to pressure wash the front of the house or the deck, we're your place. Those are in high demand during the spring, summer, and fall. And the Friends of the Library purchased pressure washers for us to loan because they were in such high demand. So just a little example of some of the fun stuff you can borrow at our library.
Awesome. So if we're not having any questions, I'm going to keep on moving. So as I mentioned, we're looking for the needs and wants of you folks, and we've put together a planning committee that we've met with. We've done a SOAR exercise, strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results, to talk about the library. And then with the staff, we did an extensive community visioning exercise. And then we are going to be putting out a survey. You are our community forum. And then we look at all of those trends and patterns, and then Maureen and her team will write the plan. So at this point, I want to now turn it over to the public input, which is you guys. And I'm going to try out this new thing called Menti. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of it. If you have a QR scanner on your phone and you would like to use your phone to use this QR code, it should bring you to Menti, and I'll give you a second to do that. I'm also going to give you another code if you want to type in menti.com. I'm going to give you an easier thing, which is a number here. So I see some people using their phones to do this. So see if it will pop up for you guys. So I'm going to stop share right now and bring up my other screen with am I sharing? Okay. So Maureen, can you see that the Menti screen at this point?
Yes,
Okay.
I can see. I see one that has 2 questions.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So do you see that in big form now? So if people go to menti.com and you type in the code 37447066, I would like you, once you're there, to say, what is one thing that you wish you could do now in the community? What is something, and again, this isn't the library, this is in the community. What is something you wish you could do now? That you can't do right now, or even maybe you'd like to be able to do more of it. So I'm gonna have you take some time, and if you have questions or you can't reach this menti.com and can't get to inputting, you can please use the chat and type in what is one thing you wish you could do now in the community.
Deb, we had a comment that when the QR code was scanned, it brought to a different question.
Okay, so it might have brought to the secondary question instead of the first question, because I had
Yes,
it.
it was
One word.
use one word to describe Westborough.
Okay, so I guess there was a QR code for each question. So, so I apologize for that. So maybe if that person can go back out, because we hadn't tried the QR code. I had given Maureen on a test one thing. So I'm seeing ice skating rink, go to the movies, connect with people, language lessons, hang out with for teens. I know there's a ton more of people on this Zoom call, so type away. You have up to 3 things that you can type in there, I believe. I think there are 3 things that you can type.
And if you had trouble, some of our others in the chat said to just refresh and you would be able to see it, or you can just go to menti.com and enter the number that's on the top of the screen right now.
Excellent. So go someplace to watch live performances, meet with friends for playing music. Excellent. Interact with much more of our town members than is now possible. Oh. Presently, there's too little means for those of us to live here to interact and too few opportunities. I don't know why it keeps scrolling, but where that happens. A
And
larger,
in the chat, we also had hanging with friends downtown and going shopping.
excellent. Yes, if you
Hunting for
can't
their-
get to Menti, please put them in um, birds of a feather, self-organized interest groups, shopping with friends, opportunity for youth to run groups for younger kids, larger, nice common space, connect with people. Shared space outdoors. I think this happens for about a minute and then it may disappear. Dog park, excellent. Any more in the chat?
Nothing else new in the chat.
Okay. So it looks like we've had 14 responses so far. Accessible free Wi-Fi, excellent. Okay. Another 15 seconds. Meet with friends for playing music. Cooking classes, excellent. Okay, so I am now going to go to the next question, I believe. I'm going to hope that I'm doing this. And now, oops, some people have already put it in. One word to describe how you envision Westborough 10 years from now. And some of you may wonder why we are asking this. And it's because the library is going to be in many places, that image that you think Westborough should be. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we want the library to be at the heart of the community and the community to be in the heart of the library. So simple in a good way, balanced, educated, diverse, dynamic, supportive, inclusive, unique, light, aesthetic and picturesque, home, intellectual, engaged, busy. Do we have anything from the chat, Maureen? So this is one word to describe how you envision Westborough 10 years from now.
Nothing else in the chat.
And we only, let's see, now we have 13. So we'll try to get as many folks to answer this as possible. It really, if I was there in person, I'd be actually going right down the line and you wouldn't be able to use the same word. I think what's happening here is a lot of people have used the word dynamic, or that's the one that's coming up really big. But if everybody can try to put in at least one word so we hear from everybody. Bustling is another word that I'm seeing. Connected, open, modern. Okay, another 15 seconds. Okay, so I am going to exit out. And make sure that, okay. So thank you, everybody, for somewhat being part of an experiment, but I think that, you know, in order to get as many people as possible to give an answer and not having to take the time to call on everybody, I think that worked very well. At this point, I'm trying to see, we have 27 people that are on the call, in the meeting. And I think at this point, if you didn't hear or see something, and at this point, if you would like to raise your hand and interject anything, or I will also, in case technology failed, I have my cheat sheet here, my facilitating pad. And at this, so what will happen now is I will be downloading the results from the Menti questions, and then that will become part of what we've been gathering here. So at this point, if anybody would like to say anything, Maureen and I will be looking for hands up, and we will call on you as we sort of wrap up and think about the community of Westborough. Does anybody have any questions or anything they would like to add?
John does.
The Boy Scouts often have a project that they do each year, especially the Eagle Scouts, and maybe we can involve them in that project. Maybe they can figure out what to do for us.
Okay, so that's not really related to this question, John, but I understand where you're going. So it would be a partnership to involve another group to help with something that would be part of a building plan and or something that came out of the strategic plan, like using outdoor spaces or creating something that's
Yes.
excellent. Thank you, John. Anybody else? Okay, so I am at this point,
I do have one question in the chat, Deb.
yes.
And that is, with the needed expansion, what will be the plans for parking? Will it be
Oh.
addressed with the capital improvement? And my answer about parking is there's no additional space on the library's property to add parking. And that's been a question we hear a lot. But you may be aware the town did a parking study recently, and earlier this year, the results of the parking study were released. Unfortunately, it didn't show that there was a parking problem in the downtown area. We all know that it's difficult to park sometimes, but the parking study looked at the spaces along, the main streets, West Main, East Main, and the streets off the Rotary, but they also looked at the side streets, and they determined that using the side streets and the municipal parking lots, that there was adequate parking for town buildings and businesses. So we can't add a parking lot. We've looked at, is it possible to, someone even suggested, could we put parking under the library and do underground parking? And unfortunately, we can't do that, just space wise. There's not enough space to do it appropriately. But there is street parking in the surrounding area. The Congregational Church next door has been wonderful about allowing library patrons to park in their parking lot when they're coming for library programs. And the other consideration is when we have programs in the evening, typically the Forbes municipal building next door is empty. So their employees are not parking in the parking lot behind the Forbes building. So sometimes it might be a short walk to get to the library, but there is parking on the streets around in our close vicinity. So I hope that answers your question about parking. Another question, how do we find the right balance between traditional books and technology while accommodating both? The difference between books and technology. And so some of that comes from our making our spaces flexible and using flexible design when we're thinking about the future. But also, I always say books are books are our brand almost. When you think of libraries, everybody always thinks of books first. And books are not going away. Printed books, I think we're gonna always see printed books. Maybe sometime in the far distant future, if you watch something like the Time Machine movie, they didn't have books, they had rings that they spun and it read to them. I think that's far, far in the future. So we will be designing space in the new library for traditional books, and there will always be a demand for those. And but we still will have to accommodate technology. And as we've seen, technology is getting smaller and smaller, and carrying, you can't see it here, our phone, our cell phones, if you remember when they first started out, it was like carrying a suitcase or a briefcase. They were so big. And now they're down to, they can fit in your pocket or your purse. Technology is getting smaller and more portable, which makes it easy for us to design our flexible spaces so we can accommodate the different ways that people will use technology. And I agree with what Sherry just said, is nothing replaces holding a book in your hand and browsing through the library. And I couldn't agree more. I have found some of the best books I've read just by browsing the shelf that I never would have discovered otherwise. And I think that that's the experience that a lot of people have had with libraries, and why libraries are such a cherished institution in communities, because we still want that. I don't see books being completely replaced with technology. A question, will the new building have easy access for kids with disabilities? Absolutely. Any new construction is required to fully meet ADA standards. And our current building met all of the standards that it was required to, but there are things that if we take on a construction project would have to be improved to present day building standards. And that would include easy access for anyone with a disability, child or adult. And that's really exciting as well. We never want our buildings to be a barrier for anyone. Another question, will we consider letting people check out Kindles or another electronic device that can hold multiple books? And actually, yes, we did have Kindles when they first came out, and they were new, and they were, I won't say they were hard to get, but they weren't as common as they are now. We loaded books onto them and let people check them out so they could test them out, kind of test drive them. And when interest kind of waned, we stopped loaning those, but we're always looking out for what the next new technology is so that we can, if it makes sense and it's possible to do it, we'll buy one and add it to one or more and add it to our room of things so that people can test it out, try it out, see if they want to buy one, or if using ours is enough. And I think that having the Kindles when we had them helped people learn how to read on a screen and how to download books and get comfortable with using that type of technology for reading.
And Maureen, I'd also point out that when I mentioned publishing on demand, a lot of that could be, and I'm seeing that authors are putting Kindle only, and they're publishing Kindle only. So now we're recirculating our Kindles with those specific items that they can't get anywhere else, but the patron doesn't want to spend the $2.99 or the $10.99 to get it through Amazon because they're not sure if it's the author, a good book or whatever. So again, that on demand, it could be an ebook on demand that's being published or something that is visceral and you can touch it, like most of our cultural things, like our art, it's still physical. So our books still are going to be published. And for children, they have shown that the not just the act of holding a book, but the act of sitting with someone, especially at the younger ages, cannot replace. It's like hugs. You can't replace that. And that is what makes reading enjoyable and becoming a habit.
And so we have a really great comment I want to share that from someone who works in healthcare with veterans in particular, and they've significantly ramped up, significantly ramped up their telehealth video to home care. And a barrier has been many not having the technology. So if the library is a resource and a known partner, that would be amazing. Not sure if that is the same idea, but something to think about for our older population to either get devices accessible or being a hub for telehealth. That's a fantastic idea. And we do have 24/7 Wi-Fi that anyone can hook up to. When the library is closed, it's accessible from the parking lot or from the Parkman Street side of the building or out front on the bench or at the curb. Sometimes you'll see cars parked outside of the library at strange times, but that's just people accessing the Wi-Fi. And yeah, I agree. If we can get them some devices that they can check out, and we do loan Wi-Fi hotspots that patrons can check out. So if they don't have internet at home, and we can't give it to them for a year at a time, we can give it to them for a couple weeks at a time. But we do have those available to check out. So adding some devices that they would be able to connect to those hotspots is a fantastic idea, so they can access telehealth when they need it. So thank you for that.
Excellent. So we are at the 8 o'clock hour. Are there any last minute questions that have come up, Maureen?
Nope, that was the last one.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank everybody for participating tonight, and hopefully you've learned a little bit more about the library's strategic plan, the building process, got your questions answered. We will ask your help as you start to see a survey come out, probably sometime in late April or thereabouts. Once you start seeing that, please share it widely with your friends, your neighbors. We really want the input, and we do want to have people have access to answering and giving their input for this strategic plan. So we really do appreciate your participation tonight, and we're so happy to see so many of you, and let people know what you've done tonight. It's not a secret, and as we're going to share that on the cable, so the recording will be shared, and you know, we really do appreciate that.
So thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll hopefully see you at the library really soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.